everybody, and welcome. My name is McClunan, and I am a counseling astrologer and a life coach. And I call myself a life navigator because I help people to navigate their lives by the light of the sun and the moon and the planets because of my astrological knowledge. So this is an update on the new moon, which is in Gemini, and it's happening on the 22nd of May at about 7:38 p.m. So it looks like it might be a beautiful one because we've been having exquisitely beautiful, clear evenings. You can't really see the new moon, but you can feel her energy. So really, new moons are always a time for new beginnings, to plant new seeds, to really kind of prepare the soil and plant the seeds for the month ahead. So it's a time to go quiet and to see what's coming up for you and to sort of enter the new month in a lunar way, in a feeling way. Now this month we have the new moon, which means that the sun and the moon come together in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is what we call a mutable air sign. Now this new moon, we don't only have the sun and the moon there, we have Venus and Mercury as well. So in astrology we have 5 personal planets. We have the sun, the moon, Mercury and Venus, and Mars. So 4 of the 5 of them, this new moon, are in Gemini, and the other one, Mars, is in Pisces. All of those signs, Pisces and Gemini, are mutable signs. Mutable energy is changeable, adaptable. It's the energy that is able to adapt to new changes and shifts and is able to actually go with change rather than resist it. Gemini specifically is a very busy sign. It's a mutable air sign. Air loves to communicate. Air loves to be outside. Air loves to be getting information, receiving information and giving information out, connecting. Gemini is one of the signs that is very connected with connecting, communicating, writing, speaking, socializing. Gemini people, or those who have strong Gemini archetypes in their charts, are busy people. They like to be out there. They often organize other people. They get things going. They get community efforts going. That's the kind of the energy of Gemini. Quite changeable. Gemini is the sign of duality, so there can be different parts to Gemini. And this particular new moon is quite dualistic, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But really it's about wanting to know. It's a very curious new moon. It wants to actually find out what's going on and understand it and learn from it. Now this one is almost like we can be pulled in 2 directions. The mind's this side and the heart's this side. So it can that causes that duality. And this one particular is connected with the flooding of information that we're actually receiving. So if we go a little bit deeper, we see that the ruler of this new moon, which is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury, which is actually the ruler of the new moon, is actually in a very tight conjunction or connection, if you like, with the planet Venus, both in Gemini, both at the same degrees, at the same degree, and both of them being squared by the planet Neptune. So this adds a completely different spin to things. In fact, it kind of adds a twist, because where Gemini wants to have information and wants to understand things, along comes Neptune and says, well, you can't really, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know where this is going. So you might have been looking all over the place at different information, but there might be no clarity, because what happens with Neptune is a planet that is connected with confusion. It's connected with idealism, hopes for the future, which can sometimes be false hopes. Whenever it touches another planet, it kind of adds a bit of fogginess. So it's a little bit like sort of wanting to go forward, but there's a fogginess in front of you and you can't really see your way forward. So this being very connected to this new moon would give us that sort of energy over the next few weeks. The other part, though, of Neptune, which is so connected to this, is that it's the planet that rules spirituality, our deeper connection to the divine or to source. So what it's really telling us is that even though we can't see the bigger picture out there, it's really about going inside and finding that knowingness within us. Now, it's a time of unknowing. I think that all of us can relate to that on some level. We don't know when this situation is going to resolve, how it's going to resolve, in what way it's going to resolve, what's going to be, what our lives are going to be like after this, what the new norm is going to be. So that's leaving a lot of us feeling kind of unsettled and very restless. And we want to know where we're going. We want to know what's actually going to be happening. And we can't. We don't know that. So it's sort of, in a way, I would say, read this energy of, it's saying to us just, how comfortable can you be with not knowing? And most of us are not comfortable with not knowing. I know that I certainly am not comfortable with not knowing. But sometimes you just can't know what the bigger picture is. So it's really just understanding that right now we need to be in the present moment as much as possible and not project too much into the future, because that's going to cause us to spin more and make us even more disillusioned. So that's the one element of it. The other element is that the new moon is squaring Mars. And Mars is in the sign of Pisces. So that's the sign that's ruled by Neptune. So that kind of adds a further level of a little bit of fogginess. Mars as an energy wants to move forward, wants to push forward, wants to fight for your rights. But it's a bit diffused because it's in Pisces. So again, that feeling of wanting to fight is kind of diffused. So on one level you might feel angry and want to fight the system and want answers, and on another level no answers are coming, because remembering, going back to my last blog, that we have a lot of retrograde energy right now. We've got Saturn retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Pluto retrograde, and Venus retrograde, which has just joined the party. So in any retrograde cycle, it's the energy of looking back, reflecting, and things tend to go backwards, not forwards. So most of us are aware of Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year, so we're quite familiar with Mercury retrograde. And we're familiar with very often our communications going belly up and losing data and having cell phones stolen or broken, and missing planes, missing flights. That's Mercury retrograde, and most of us are aware of that. Now, Venus retrograde is a completely different thing. It's also retrograde, so it's also going backwards. It doesn't actually go backwards. It looks from our perspective on Earth that it's going backwards, but the energy of it is like it has a backward momentum. So Venus retrograde only goes retrograde once every 18 months, and she goes retrograde for 40 days, and she's got a shadow period which comes before the retrograde period and after. So this retrograde started on the 13th of May and ends on the 25th of June. But there's a shadow period which started on April the 9th and ends on July the 29th. So this retrograde cycle, this Venus retrograde cycle, which is very connected, as I said, with this new moon, is really about, it connects back to whatever was going on in 2012. So have a look back to see what was happening in 2012. And if you've got a copy of your chart, you can have a look there. This one is going to be in Gemini, as was the 2012 one. Now, Venus retrograde cycles will always make us look at the things associated with Venus. So that is our value systems. What is valuable to us? What do we value? How much do we value those things, those people, those situations? Where do we find our values? Are our values that we have now, that we kind of just trot out, yes, this is valuable to me, is it still valuable? Is it still congruent with who you are now? So you might have had a value instilled on you by your caregivers or your teachers, or the early authority figures in your life, and those values might not be so anymore. So it's really looking at the value that you place on everybody else and that you place on yourself, and what you do in order to feel valuable. Do you work very hard in order to feel valued? Do you give of yourself possibly too much in order to be valued? Do you align yourself with a specific quality which then gives you value? For example, you might say you're an empath. That might give you a sense of value because you feel the pain of everybody else. But if you define yourself by that, then that might not be serving you. It might be an aspect of you, but it might not serve you if you define yourself too tightly by that. If you define yourself and find value in yourself as a business person or as somebody who can make things happen, check in to see if that still is a value to you. So that's what this retrograde cycle is going to ask of us. The other thing it asks us to do is to look at our finances, because Venus is connected with money. So it's to reassess and look at our finances, at where we spend our money, how we spend our money, whether we need to cut back, whether we need to change our spending habits. Venus retrograde periods are not always the best periods to make major financial commitments. Usually it's better to wait until the retrograde cycle's passed. Not always possible, but it's better. And then relationships. Relationships are huge for the Venus retrograde cycle, because Venus is the planet of love and relationships. So for the next 35 days or so, and the shadow period afterwards, we're going to be questioning our relationships. For many people, past relationships might resurface. So somebody might phone you out the blue to chat or to get together with you. So just notice that and see what that person represented to you, if it's a past relationship, and what they might be triggering, what they might be, they're contacting you might be might be something that you can inquire about. Somebody from 2012 might re-enter your life. Not necessarily, but it could, because it's a similar cycle. So it's really looking at our relationships, looking whether they serve us, and asking ourselves, who am I with? Why am I with that person? How much do I value this person? How do we communicate? Because remember that Venus is retrograde in Gemini. So it's going to be about communications. How we communicate. Are we effectively communicating? Or are we communicating in a way that we've always communicated before that might not work very well, or might not serve us, or might not be nurturing to us or the people that we're in relationship with? So relationships and communications at this time can be a little bit tricky, because Venus is retrograde and it's in Gemini and it's in a very close aspect to Neptune. So there might be stages where, or times where you have a disagreement, where you feel like you can't move forward with something because somebody just isn't understanding you, or you're not understanding them. So it's very, very important that we clarify what we're saying during the next while. So if you have a relationship, or we're in relationship with people all the time, just be clear about your communications and take the time to stop and communicate clearly with purpose. In other words, doing like a check-in, where you check in to see where you're at emotionally, what your needs are, how you're feeling. Real, deep, proper, meaningful conversations wherever you can. Very important. And if you're living alone, or if you don't have that opportunity, be sure to be communicating with yourself and asking yourself those very, very important questions at this time and throughout the next couple of months. So that's really, it can also be connected. Venus retrograde can also ask us to look at our earning potential, how we earn our money, whether we feel that the way we spend our days is meaningful to us, and if we need to be putting something in that is more meaningful to us, if we can't change the whole thing. And a lot of people are experiencing money issues right now, and they're having to cut back a lot. So it's just to be aware of that, and just to see what's coming up for you in that sort of realm, and also to see where you can be innovative. Gemini is a very innovative sign. So if you always make your living in a certain way and that's not working, or you can't work for possibly because of the lockdown, is to look at what else you could do. I had a client session yesterday, and she said she's looking at launching an online business, something that she hasn't done before. Maybe that's an answer for her. So looking at the way you do business in a different way and being adaptable to that, because that's Gemini. That's Gemini, being adaptable to it. Our work, our relationships, our finances, this is like a big giant reboot. So with all this retrograde energy, we want to forge forward, and it's not always possible. And all of us are feeling that on some level or another. I just want to see if I've covered all the points that I wanted to cover. And it really is about being more okay with the unknown. So really connecting in with ourselves, connecting in with your intuition. This new moon, there's an aspect, a very easy, beautiful, flowing aspect to Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, which are all in Capricorn, which in this light actually gives us a certain amount of grounding and common sense. So when you're flooded with information from every single source available and possible, when your cell phone's going mad, when you're bombarded by messages and videos that people are sending you, it's really important that you follow your own inner authority. Read, listen, watch, and then see, while you're watching it, does this resonate with me on a deep level? Is this the truth for me? And I think this is a time when it's not about being dogmatic about one particular truth. It's about being curious and open and looking at things and saying, not sure about that. Yes, maybe a bit of that, maybe a bit of that, but without completely discounting it out of hand immediately. And I think we all need that. I think the planet needs that, to see things from a bigger perspective, to see things from your own inner authority. I think that's going to get us through the uncharted waters that we find ourselves in, and that we're heading to more of, because we don't know when or where this is going. So once again, just take care of yourself, value yourself, do the things that make you feel good, that nourish your soul. Spend time in nature, ground yourself. This is very restless, very airy, very movable, kind of electric-y energy. So be sure to ground, be sure to go outside. When you can walk. Sit and look at a flower, lean against a tree. Spend time with your loved ones, quality time. That's what's needed right now, connection. So I hope that helps. John and I are doing live calls on Facebook on Wednesday nights for half an hour. So tonight we'll be doing one, if I get this out by the end of today, which is Wednesday. And then we're doing another one every Sunday, just to support, to create some kind of a support for people, and also to get together to shine the light, because I believe that this is a time where we really need to get together to shine the light. There's a lot of darkness out there, a lot of rage, a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of uncertainty, and we need to stand together as community. And this new moon is a perfect one. Gemini's community. So be community oriented. If you feel that you can reach out to someone that needs you, do that. Send them a text, send them something uplifting. Tell them that you care, tell them that you're there. That's what we all need now. Lots of love, and take care of yourselves. Thanks for listening and watching.